Which giant images are fake? Which giant images are real? Is there any concrete evidence of giants, such as bones and footprints? How did giants enter scientific literature, and why were they removed from textbooks? What are the common characteristics of giants as described in ancient texts? This documentary has everything you need to know.
The world is full of things that our minds don't want to believe are true. We don't want to believe some interesting facts because our bodily desire is against our mind going out of the norm so as not to be disturbed. Even Einstein said that he did not want to believe in the reality of quantum physics, which is full of contradictions to this 3D life as we know it, but that he had to get used to this reality. In the same way, everything we see around us as normal is actually a miracle when you do a little research, but our bodily desire doesn't want our minds to go out of the normal. So we live as if it is normal without thinking about the miraculous aspect of it. Since we cannot change reality, it will continue to affect us whether we believe it or not. But it is up to us to change this world, which is full of chaos and evil because of the truths we don't want to believe, by living in accordance with the truth. This episode will contribute to that a little bit more, because the existence of giants would also reveal the reason for their existence. In other words, it will prove that humans and aliens, the jinn in Islamic culture, can marry and that aliens exist. Then it will reveal that the aliens continue to cause this today and that they are trying to throw the world into chaos by creating a hybrid race, Gog and Magog, who are caught between two dimensions, to spread again and take the world back under their control. It will also reveal a miracle of the Quran by showing that the tribe of Ad mentioned in the Quran is the same as the empire of Akkad. This will prevent the repetition of the evil that has happened in history. Despite all the giant human remains covered up by those who want to destroy the truth, I welcome you to another episode full of evidence that is an important part of the big picture that you need to see, and that you will be convinced of facts that are hard to believe. In the previous chapter, we explained that the flood of Noah took place because of the endless chaos in the continent of Mu and other parts of the world ruled by Mu. In this chapter, we will talk about the part of the chaos that took place at that time, the part related to giants, and the proof of the existence of giants.
O people of Ad, giants, remember that Allah made you successors after the people of Noah, and increased you greatly in stature. As for Ad, giants, they acted arrogantly throughout the land with no right, boasting, "Who is superior to us in might?" That was giants, followed the command of every stubborn tyrant.
First of all, almost all ancient societies such as Mu, Atlantis, Greek, Scandinavian, South American, European, Caucasian, Turkish, Persian, Mongolian, Indian, etc. have their own mythology of giants and heroes who struggle against these giants. Giants are mentioned in the legends and tales of almost all societies. All over the world, there are written and oral traditions about a race of giants that existed in ancient times. Tepegöz in Turkish mythology, the Danavas and Daityas of India, the Rakshasas of Ceylon, the Titans of the Greek world, the gigantic heroes of Egypt, the Imims of the Jews in the land of Moab, the famous giants Anakims, and the Chaldean Isbudars. All are epithets for giants in different cultures. Even King Nimrod in the parable of the prophet Abraham was one of these Isbudars. In the Anglo-Saxon epic Beowulf, it is emphasized that the father of the giant Grendel is a human and his mother is a being from another dimension. As giants are mentioned in the written works of polytheistic religions that mention Mu and Atlantis, giants are also mentioned in the Abrahamic religions. The people of Ad in the Quran, as we will see in more detail later, were made up of giants. In a hadith, Prophet Muhammad said that the Gog and Magog mentioned in the Quran are giants and dwarves who will invade the world again in the end times. The Torah also mentions Og, a king about 5 meters tall. In the story of Moses, the Torah and the Holy Quran also mention Prophet David, who killed the giant Goliath. The Old Testament records that in the time of Moses, Joshua, and David, some countries were inhabited by giants, with whom the Jews were like grasshoppers. Many eyewitnesses also mention concrete evidence of giants. Writers such as Herodotus, Diodorus, Siculus, Homer, Pliny, Plutarch, and Philostratus mention having seen the skeletons of some of the giants who died ages ago. In the 14th century, the writer Boccaccio wrote of a 10-meter skeleton of a giant found in a cave in Sicily, as well as being mentioned in historical sources, mythologies, religions, and legends. There is concrete evidence of giants all over the world. Although there is a lot of evidence, and even today, there are giant people between 2.5 to 3 meters tall. For some reason, the existence of taller giants seems like a fairy tale to some people. Acromegaly or gigantism is the result of abnormal growth in humans and is a disease. In these diseases, people can grow up to 2.5 meters. For example, Robert Wadlow, the tallest person who has ever lived, only lived to the age of 22. Robert Wadlow was constantly growing and was 2.72 meters tall when he died. Robert Wadlow, like many others with gigantism, used a cane and a foot brace to walk. As a result, this abnormality in humans is a very rare disease. But what we are going to show in this video is evidence of a race of giant humans who are usually over 2.5 meters tall and can move very well. The fact that these people are taller, live healthily, and are in groups shows that they are not the result of a disease. So you won't see huge bones because they don't belong to people 50 meters tall. In fact, the skull bones of giants 2.5 to 3 meters tall are almost as big as those of normal people. It is not clear at first glance that they are giants, but scientists and experts confirm that these bones belong to giants. Now, let's move on to the concrete evidence of giants. These pictures from a Photoshop contest were spread around as if they were real, even appearing in magazines and newspapers. People who do not understand image programming may think that these pictures, which are made by enlarging a real human skeleton and pasting it to another picture, are real, while people with knowledge of image programs can understand that it is fake, even when they look a little carefully. Although these fake giant pictures have caused a stir, there are of course real pictures and evidence of giants. First of all of the sites on the internet describing the giants have mixed fake and real pictures, and either accepted them all as real or accepted them all as fake. But most of the fake pictures have already been published on the Design Crowd site, which organizes a worldwide Photoshop contest. In addition, to check the authenticity of images on the internet, we use the highly reliable ELA analysis program, which is also used by forensic institutions worldwide. If you want to investigate and learn whether digital images are real or fake, you can get free ELA analysis training from our site. In this program, if there is concentrated whiteness or blackness on a high-resolution image, we understand that the image has been manipulated and that part has been added. So if there is concentrated dark black or dark whiteness in a region, it means that those parts of the picture have been played. So these pictures are fake. If this is not the case and the colors in the picture are close to each other and spread close to homogeneous, we understand that it has not been played. That is, it is most likely real. This is the image that I find the most realistic on the site, the giant skull coming out of the water. The other images are obvious at first glance, but this one looks very real. When I searched where the image was first posted, it was first posted on this Photoshop contest site. And in order to analyze the image, I need to find the highest resolution one. But this is the first version of the image and it is very low resolution. But even though it's in low resolution, when we analyze it, we can see the inscription Adobe, and also this giant skull is bright white, which means it was added later. One of the most challenging pictures for me was this huge, giant picture with blue plastic on it. Because it was done in a different style, you can see the extreme color differences in the picture. So the ELA analysis also shows that this picture is a fake. The analysis of this giant picture shows that it is fake. It was already published on the Photoshop site and it was made for the contest. This very realistic picture of a giant person in the water is also probably fake, because you can see the color difference in the area where the giant is and in other areas. The colors are not homogeneous. I could not find the original source of the picture. The picture of the giant, which was so perfectly prepared that it gave me a lot of trouble, is also a fake. It is almost impossible to tell from the image analysis of the picture, but you can see the difference in intensity in the area where the giant is. But the original picture is on this site, the site of a team of archaeologists. This picture of a giant skull allegedly found on the island of Pitcairn is also really well done and deserves to fool people. This picture, which is very difficult to see from image analysis, is also a fake. The original picture was taken in 1934, so I think the analysis program could not detect it because image was in black and white. Only when I found the original picture on this site did I know for sure that it was a fake. This is the site of a travel team. This picture is also a fake, and it's really well done. It's very difficult to see in the image analysis program. One area is completely black, and another area is completely white. And here is the original of this picture on this site, and here it's the site of a team of archaeologists. No matter how much research I have done on this image, I have not found any evidence that it is a fake. The ELA analysis of the image shows that there is no problem. It's very difficult to fool ELA analysis, but not impossible. Again, the skull in the fake picture we have just seen is taken from this picture, so this skull becomes a suspect in the suspect picture. Again, no matter how I look at this picture, there seems to be a problem and there doesn't seem to be a problem. The colors seem to be very harmonious, but at the same time, there seems to be a difference in the area where the giant is. Besides that, no matter how much I searched for information about this picture, I couldn't find any. After all, if it is photoshopped, it is very well done, and it is suspicious that there is no information about such a picture. The original version of these giant human images, allegedly found in Egypt, was published on this website. In 2010, the images were deleted due to an error on the site, but the pictures are real. Some people claim that the camera lens makes them look big, but there's another view of this bucket right next to the skull from the same excavation site. When you compare the buckets, you realize how big the giant skull really is. I mean, the skull is really big. The analysis of this picture found in Edinburgh, Scotland, which is said to be a knight, says that there is no problem. But since the picture is low resolution, we cannot be sure of the ELA analysis. But when we look at other pictures taken in the same region, especially in these pictures reflected in the media, the bones of the giants have been removed. Besides, when you compare the size of the empty tomb of the giants with the size of the people there, this picture of giant looks realistic. It is therefore very likely that these giant human images are real. The pictures in the examples you will see now are enlarged, so you cannot understand them from the ELA analysis, because the same picture was enlarged. Nothing else was added, so there is no color explosion. Only around the edges of the enlarged image we can see that softening has been done. And anyway, when we do a general search on the internet, if both large and small versions of the same picture come up, it is already fake. This picture was enlarged in the same way, and even some of the garbage in the original picture was removed. We have extensive and reliable information about the pictures and the evidence that we will show after this stage. Because of scientific institutions like the Smithsonian, as you will see evidence of in a moment, scientists have to adhere to the belief in evolution. And that's why they tend to underestimate the lengths of giant bones that they can't cover up, as you will see in a moment, to fit the evolutionary scheme. Again, they tend to make high-tech structures like the Giza pyramid, for example, look like they were built in recent history because it would be more in line with the belief in evolution. In this chapter, you will see more clearly why the institutions of science are under the monopoly of the Freemasons, why scientists have to adhere to the belief in evolution, and what they do because of this adherence to evolution. In addition, the exact length of the bones you will now see cannot be calculated, but only their estimated length. One of the reasons for this is that the bones are so old that they are in pieces, and it is difficult to calculate the exact length. But because the bones are so large, they belong to a larger race than normal humans, and this fact can be easily seen by comparing them with normal human bones. In 1890, anthropologist Georges Fache de la Pogue discovered the Castelnau giant, one of the largest human skeletons in the world, in a Bronze Age cemetery in Castelnau-les-Laizes, France. The bones were more than twice the size of normal skeleton parts. They were about 3.5 to 4 meters long. The bones of the Castelnau giant were studied at the University of Montpellier. In 1892, the bones were again carefully examined at the Montpellier School of Medicine and were recognized as representing a very long species. However, the size was characterized as abnormal, and it was thought that such a large size of the human skeleton was caused by disease. It is interesting to note that shortly after this incident, in 1894, press reports mentioned the discovery of more giant human bones in a prehistoric cemetery in Montpellier. According to the news, these giants were between 305 and 457 centimeters in height. In 1912, the New York Times reported the discovery of 18 of the world's largest human skeletons in archaeological excavations near Lake Delavan in Wisconsin. They ranged in height from 231 to 304 centimeters, and their skulls were much larger than those of any race living in America today. They had double rows of teeth and 6 fingers on each hand and foot. Several reports say that these giant human skeletons were sent to the Smithsonian Institution, but Smithsonian officials deny these claims. The picture in the newspaper article of the mass of giant skulls found in Texas again shows a very large human being. These giant skulls, found along with many other giant skulls, are not where they were sent and are now missing. These missing skulls are just a few examples of the countless missing bones of giants that have been documented in books and documentaries, but whose evidence has been obscured and destroyed. Found in 1913 in the Ozark Mountains in the United States, the skulls of the giants in this picture, whose pictures were published in the newspapers, are very large and different from the normal skull next to it. Those who researched these bones at that time said that they were about 3 meters tall, but for some reason, these bones disappeared from the place where they were sent to be studied. In 1933, in Steelville, Missouri, a skeleton of this giant, about 2.5 meters long, was found. As can be seen in the picture, the person in charge, Les Eaton, was photographed lying next to the 2.5 meter giant. According to the statements of the people who took care of the giant at the time, the giant skeleton was sent to the Smithsonian Institution and was never heard from again. The Smithsonian Institute first examined the 2.5 meter long giant skeleton shown in these exhibitions in 1895 and then bought it for $500, which was a very large sum of money in the money of that time. Then the Smithsonian Institute closed the issue by saying that it was made of gelatin. That is, it was fake. without showing any evidence about the skeleton. Dr. Furstenant reported that he had unearthed a skeleton about 2.5 meters long on Catalina Island. According to a legend, Dr. Furstenant had heard in Mexico a giant and noble race had lived on Catalina Island long before the white man and had disappeared. Later, amateur archaeologist Ralph Glidden reported finding more giant skeletons on the same island, but they were destroyed. Discovered in 1890 by Jeffrey Wilson at the historic Ohio Snake Mound, this skeleton was reported to be over 2.5 meters long. The giant human skeletons discovered by a research team at the historic Cresap Mound in West Virginia in 1959 were confirmed by all scientists in this group. Dr. Daniel Drago, the head of the team, published a picture of the 2.5 meter skeleton in his book. Research is still ongoing on this three-fingered hand recently found in Peru, which is not thought to belong to a human being. According to some estimates by doctors, archaeologists, and anthropologists, the owner of this hand was probably between 2.7 meters and 3 meters tall, said Dr. Edson Salazar Vivanco. Professor Lee Berger of the University of the Witwatersrand wrote about his discovery of giant bone fragments in South Africa and showed the giant hip and femur bones to a journalist who came to interview him. He said that this was not an abnormality, not a disease, because there are so many human bones like this. This giant human species is called archaic Homo sapiens or Homo heidelbergensis. He reported that they could not calculate their exact height from the fragmented bones, but they were definitely larger than 2 meters, 15 centimeters. In the late 1950s, many graves and bones of giants were found in the Euphrates River Valley in southeastern Turkey. Regarding the giant human skeletons found in Turkey, Dr. Gültekin Kaymaz explains that the claim that these skeletons belong to animals and are exactly the size of human bones is a lie. Dr. Gültekin Kaymaz explains that the giant tombs in Anatolia belong to giant people and that these tombs have been considered sacred by the locals for centuries and that people are afraid to touch them. In Borjomi, Georgia, a research team found giant human bones. On August 6, 2008, the Russian Channel 1 TV station covered the story of this team. There were already many people in the Borjomi area who claimed to have seen giants before, and the bones found by the team were human bones, but much bigger. The mummified giant finger that pyramid researcher Gregor Spory found and photographed in the house of an Egyptian man later disappeared. In Humboldt, Nevada, mummified human bones 4 meters long were found and published in the newspapers on June 19, 1931. According to researchers interested in the subject, much of the evidence on giants has either been destroyed or stored in warehouses, especially by pseudo-scientific institutions such as the Smithsonian in the United States. The revelation of the cover-up came to light and became very obvious with the discovery of many giant skeletons in the Lovelock Cave in the United States. In the Lovelock Cave in America, many giant skeletons were found during excavations to collect bat dung. The Pautese Indians who lived in the area also said that the red-haired giants had once lived in Lovelock Cave. When the giant skeletons were first found, the existence of giants was confirmed by many people, and some of them were sent to scientific institutions for study, and the remaining artifacts related to the giants were sent to the Humboldt Museum. But soon after, in 1911, a fire broke out in the Humboldt Museum, and a lot of evidence related to the giants was burned. Today, normal-sized skulls are exhibited in the museum, and on the Wikipedia site about Lovelock, it is written that the size of the bones found is normal, and that the legends about the giants are told to attract tourists. But the red-colored skulls in the pictures taken by researchers such as Don Monroe, with the permission of the museum staff who went to the storage room, are different and larger. Again, the museum staff explained that these bones are kept in storage because the government does not accept artifacts related to the Indians. In the United States, as a matter of policy, museums are not allowed to display artifacts related to the Indians. In other words, the Indians are ignored, and the evidence of them, in terms of history and science, is covered up. It is not surprising that this attitude towards the Indians is the same attitude towards the giants, which would greatly disrupt the belief in evolution. Siddhav.no, another reliable research site, reports that the Humboldt Museum has confirmed the existence of giants and that giant bones are stored in warehouses. Finally, this jawbone looks like an illusion, but the teeth are clearly much larger, and the color and type of bone is not normal. You may wonder why these sensational findings about giants don't make headlines. The Smithsonian Institute, which was founded with the support of Rockefeller and has monopolized the history institutions, is also the institution that determines what will be written in history books in schools. There are judicial cases against the Institute in the United States because the Institute, which is pro-evolution, oppresses its employees who defend the theory of creation. Many reliable researchers have proven that the Smithsonian Institute has collected, destroyed, or hidden fossils related to giants. In fact, this is not the first time that the Smithsonian Institute has covered up. The Institute, which is known for its pro-evolution research, hid the fossils of the Cambrian explosion that it found in 1909 for 70 years because they would harm the theory of evolution, and kept this information secret in its warehouse. The researcher Richard Dewhurst has written a book about the Smithsonian Institute's cover-up of many giant fossils found in different regions. Richard Dewhurst's book, which contains important evidence on the subject of giants, proves the existence of giants who lived on Earth for a period of time and were even kings of countries. The book, which proves that giants live in many parts of the world just by the pictures in it, reveals the following important issues. First of all, the book presents important evidence of an ancient race of giants in North America and the cover-up of evidence of this race of giants by the Smithsonian Institution for 150 years. In particular, it shows how many giant skeletons and the remains of giants have been found in the Mississippi Valley. The book includes 400 years of reports of giant finds, including newspaper articles, first-person accounts, government historical records, and illustrated field reports. Proves the existence of more than 4,000 giant skeletons, including kings over 9 meters tall, in a megalithic burial complex on Catalina Island in the 1920s that dates back at least 6,000 years, includes more than 100 rare photographs, as well as eyewitness accounts of the missing evidence. It shows how thousands of giant skeletons were unearthed at mound builder sites in the Americas, but disappeared from the historical record. Other hidden giant human discoveries, such as the giant mummies found in the Spirit Cave in Nevada, wrapped in thin fabrics and dated to 8000 BC, are also examined in the book. Hundreds of red-haired giant swamp mummies found in a sinkhole on the west coast of Florida, dating back to 7500 BC, and the remains of giant human cities in Oklahoma, Arizona, with populations exceeding 100,000 people, are examined in the book. Dewhurst shows how this suppression of facts began shortly after the Civil War, and how it escalated to the complete destruction of evidence in 1879, when Major John Wesley Powell, a staunch evolutionist, was appointed director of the Smithsonian and launched the Manifest Destiny agenda. So the book specifically shows how the Smithsonian Institution has repeatedly destroyed the fossils of giants. This article was written as a rebuttal to Richard Dewhurst's book. It points out a few minor errors in the book and says that the book is a complete lie. But no one can claim that the dozens of artifacts, eyewitness accounts, and newspaper reports of giants found in the United States alone since the 1800s are all lies. Again, The existence of giants whose pictures are in the public eye and the fact that these giants have disappeared confirms Dewhurst's book. It is not surprising that the Smithsonian institution, which was previously involved in the cover-up in the name of evolution, also covered up the giants. There are already many witnesses to the cover-up. And again, super-secret state institutions like Area 51, where even American presidents can enter with permission from the deep state, reveal the cover-up attitude of the American state. In addition, the book Giants on Record by Jim Vieira and Hugh Newman talks about the same subject. The book proves the evidence of giants found in America and that the Smithsonian Institute has been destroying the evidence of giants since 1800. The documentary series Search for the Lost Giants, which started in 2014, is about the bones of giants up to 3 meters long that are still being found. The Smithsonian Institute's own scientific annual reports have 17 accounts of 7-8 meter giants. The Institute comically posts news about giants on its website these days, but still, textbooks do not include a diagram of giants on the evolutionary ladder or the Cambrian explosion that destroyed the theory of evolution. Giants have actually been recognized by scientists before. The human species called Homo meganthropus was known to be much taller than normal humans, but its exact length was not calculated. The interesting thing is that the giants that were first accepted by the scientific community were later deleted from the scientific literature because they did not fit the theory of evolution. For example, the human species known as Cro-Magnon man, discovered in 1868, was a giant and was known by scientists to be more than 2 meters, 15 centimeters tall. This giant human species could not be placed in the evolutionary scheme as an intermediate species, and no theory could be offered as to how they came to be. Cro-Magnons, according to scientists, lived during the last ice age, so the period of Noah's flood. A mutation was detected in the genes of Cro-Magnons, which disappeared thousands of years ago. Unlike humans, Cro-Magnons had a slightly different skull shape and rectangular eyes. But, strangely enough, today scientists have changed the name and the length of the Cro-Magnon because it doesn't fit evolution. Its name has become early modern man, and its height has become the same as that of a normal human being. Scientists say that they have made this change because it is more suitable for evolution. What scared scientists enough to falsely shorten and rename the over 7-foot-long Cro-Magnon? Scientists all over the world are obliged to be committed to evolution. This phenomenon is called materialist a priori, which means presupposing a belief and building their research on that presupposition. But contrary to popular belief, a priori does not mean taking real knowledge as a basis. On the contrary, it means assuming a belief as fact. A priori is an unscientific commitment to a belief. In other words, because of the a priori, even if it has been disproved, the theory of evolution is adopted as a belief, and scientific data is fanatically structured according to this belief. That is, information that may fit the belief in evolution is searched for in an unscientific way, and information that does not fit the belief in evolution is ignored or hidden. However, what science says is the truth, and faith is shaped according to science. Shaping science according to faith, as evolutionists do, is illogical and unscientific. There are many scientists in the scientific community who admit that they have to adhere to the materialist a priori, that is, the belief in evolution. In other words, all over the world, scientific institutions such as the Smithsonian, which have accepted evolution as a prerequisite, have imposed the condition of acceptance of evolution on their employees and the scientific community because they have a say. They first warn and then excommunicate scientists who go against them, that is, who tell the truth, and then they say in press releases that all scientists accept evolution. As you can see, the Antichrist system has heaven in one hand and hell in the other, since we will show how evolutionists cover up many truths, how evolution is not a science but a belief accepted by polytheistic religions, and the evidence of scientists who have debunked the theory of evolution with their articles in the chapter on evolution. We will skip it now. Michael Cremo, an American researcher and paleontologist, in his book The Unknown History of Mankind, shows many evidences that seriously contradict the generally accepted theory of human development, that is, the history we are told in history books and taught in schools, and he mentions that these evidences are usually covered up and not mentioned. The Smithsonian Institute shows only 1% of the historical collections. In other words, 99% of the artifacts they find are hidden in their repositories. More than 500,000 ancient papyri belong to the UK's Exploration Society and are locked up at Oxford University under the pretense that they are being researched. Very, very few of them have been shared with the public. Why all this secrecy and cover-up, all this effort to hide historical facts from the people? All these facts show why the infidels who keep people away from the truth and cover up the truth for their own benefit are threatened by the Creator. The meaning of the word kafir in Islam is to cover up the truth and hide the truth. The meaning of the word Dajjal means the great liar, that is, the one who makes the truth appear false and the lie appear true. They hide the truth so that the belief in secularism and evolution is not undermined, so that there is no evidence for Islam, so that Islam, which is in the true interest of all people, is weakened, and the reign of the Freemasons, which is based on self-interest, is not destroyed. In the same way, making good people and societies look bad and trying to make bad people and societies look good is one of the Masonic activities that you will see many proofs of in this documentary series. Again, Dr. Gultekin Keymaz said that the original findings about the giants were confiscated and taken away by the military in the 1950s. Professor Keymaz tells the story of a driver carrying giant human skeletons unearthed by the Turkish Armed Forces in 1950. In the following chapters, we will touch upon the fact that the Freemasons continue their reign by covering up the truth with deep state organizations such as Gladio in all countries of the world, that they hide information in cosmic rooms for their own interests, not for the state. On this site, where information about giants is archived, you can see the information of giant human remains found all over the world that have been reflected in the news and reports so far. To date, many giant human skeletons have been found, and these skeletons are still being unearthed in different parts of the world. When you watch the Redhead video series, you can see some of the evidence of newly found giant bones. In order to understand the ancient lunatics that we are going to show you now, you first need to understand how giants were formed. That is, giants were the children of the gods. As you will see in a moment in historical records and mythological sources, giants were the children of the gods and were called gods or demigods. That's why giants are always portrayed as gods and kings, because they were not just ordinary beings born to ordinary people. They were the children of gods, and that's why they were kings. As we have shown in previous chapters, the serpent gods of Mu, Atlantis, and their colonies somehow crossed over into our dimension, and the giants, the children of these gods, became kings. This is why in these polytheistic countries that shared the same beliefs and culture as Mu, kings were depicted as giants. For example, Zeus's sons, Hercules and Samson, were also giants and kings. These ancient paintings, in which kings are depicted as giants, while the size of other objects and people are normal, and which are drawn in a similar way in different parts of the world. Of course, they are not imaginary or coincidental, and they are not drawn randomly. In addition to the paintings, drawings, sculptures, figures, and coffins showing these giants, Another example of giants living all over the world is the giant footprints found all over the world. These footprints are not just random traces. They are traces imprinted on special stones in order to leave a lasting artifact. In fact, in India, which continues its ancient polytheistic religions, people bless and even worship these giant footprints. It is a fact that in ancient times, people drew and reflected what they saw. Mostly they were drawing or engraving on the walls in the most realistic way. These giant footprints found all over the world are likewise true to reality. For some reason, it has not been investigated whether these giant footprints found all over the world were actually made by giants or man-made. But the existence of these giant footprints, no matter how they are made, is definitely a proof that giants exist all over the world. Because even if they were built by normal people, these kings had people build them. Otherwise, why would people draw giant footprints everywhere as a symbol? Such a symbol could not have been invented in the same way all over the world, or made by chance, or for nothing. They are symbols of the presence and power of giants who are kings. In fact, such giant hand and footprint symbols are not footprints left behind by a giant on the road by chance. They are symbols, often specially made and carved into stones. For example, the footprint of the Prophet Muhammad was specially carved into a stone by those who loved him to preserve his memory. The footprint of the Prophet Muhammad did not happen by miracle. It was made according to the measurements of his feet by someone who loved him and wanted to preserve his memory. As another example, there are giant footprints more than 1 meter long in front of the ancient temple of Ayin Dara in Syria. In the temple of Ayin Dara, like all other ancient structures, there are basalt sculptures and blocks made with unknown ancient technology. The temple of Ayin Dara reveals the relationship between giants and ancient polytheism. Again, the consecrated giant footprint of Lord Hanuman in India is found in 4 different places, and surprisingly, the size and type of these footprints are the same, so they are really from the same foot or made according to the same foot. So who were these giants and how were they formed? So the most important question is, how were these giants formed? First of all, in ancient records all over the world, it is written that non-human kings from the upper dimension married human women and had children. And according to the ancient records, some of the children of these gods became giants. Remember, in the previous chapters, we gave examples of many people today who marry or have relations with aliens and jinn. And we even showed that this has been a common phenomenon since the world has existed.
Demek ki fizyolojik bir bedenleri var ki ibadet
tabii.
ediyorlar, onlar da namaz
Tabii.
diyorlar, içiyorlar, evleniyorlar.
Cin suresinde
bir sosyal
anlatıyor.
hayat yaşıyorlar.
Peki bu
Zalimler var.
evlenme insanlarla cinlerin evlenmesi gibi şeyler falan var mı öyle bir şey?
Var, gerçekten var, evet.
Peki nasıl oluyor?
Bu şekilde evlenen, hatta çok tanınmış bir manken biliyorum.
In our previous chapters, we have explained that aliens, that is jinn, living in the upper dimension have the same mass as us, but are composed of subatomic parts, while we humans are composed of hollow atoms. Again, we have shown in previous chapters that beings in the upper dimension can cross over to the lower dimension when the necessary conditions are met, and we have shown many proofs that aliens, that is, jinns, cross over to our dimension as biological beings. The phenomenon of marrying aliens is most common today in the Americas. For this reason, many TV series and documentaries have been filmed in the Americas about aliens and their abduction and impregnation of women. We have also noted in our previous episodes that the corpses found, many of which were found to have intelligence, even though they were not human, were likely to be hybrid beings born as a result of this relationship. You have already seen how and why the Smithsonian Institute destroyed the fossils of giants. The rulers of the world who monopolize the scientific institutions, of course, do not want this information and evidence to be revealed and prevent it as much as possible so that their interests are not harmed, because the rulers of the world worship aliens through magic and receive help and orders from them. People do not believe in the facts, saying, if these things were real, governments and scientists would reveal them, so they are not real. But because there is so much evidence, and because the truth has a good habit of coming to light sooner or later, you are watching this documentary today. The ancient inscriptions and evidence you will see in this episode will reinforce the proof that humans and gods, the jinns, can marry. So, you might ask, if humans and aliens can marry, also today, why aren't giants forming today, and where are they today? And the answer to this question is related to the well-known Gog and Magog case and quantum physics. Since the greatest energy affecting the upper dimensions is human thought, in the past, aliens who obtained more thought power from humans through magic were able to cross into our dimension and exhibit strong reproduction. So, as we have already shown the evidence, before the flood, jinns lived in the same dimension as humans. That's why there were giants who could live in our dimension. But after the flood, these aliens were sent back to their own dimension. Then the children of these aliens, the Gog and Magog, were imprisoned in the upper dimension by the copper wall of Zulkarnain. Today, according to the testimonies of people who have been abducted by aliens and women who have married jinns, their children live in the upper dimension. My guess is that Gog-Magog, that is giants and dwarf beings, the hybrid children of humans and jinn, who are trapped between the fourth dimension and the third dimension by means of the Zulkarnain embankment, will overcome the magnetic copper embankment built by the prophet Zulkarnain, which prevents them from passing into the third dimension at a time when people are completely oblivious to them. They will flood the world in masses from every hill and consume almost all food resources in the world. Since we know that there is no such race of giants today, we can understand that giants were mutants created in ancient times. Of course, the only reason why this abnormality, which is contrary to normal human biology, was so widespread was because the gods were mating with humans, as we have presented evidence of in previous videos and as described in ancient records, because an abnormality and a mutation could not be so widespread. Giants were regularly produced, and the only explanation for the cessation of the production of these giants, which almost completely disappeared after the flood, was that the aliens were banished from the third dimension to the fourth dimension, as stated in the Quran and all ancient records. That is, the relations between aliens and humans were interrupted in order to understand that the giants were born as a result of the mating between humans and alien who claimed to be gods. Let us first look at how widespread the cult of the marriage of gods and humans was in the pagan religions of antiquity. In fact, the concept of demigods is a phenomenon that exists in all world mythologies as a result of these marriages. Demigods were the hybrid children of gods and humans. These hybrid gods are also referred to as demigods in the scientific literature. This article explains that demigods are hybrid gods born to a god and a human mother. Again, in this list you can see that demigods exist in all polytheistic religions all over the world. We have already explained that giants are genetically different from humans. Giants are genetically different from humans because they are hybrids born from aliens and humans. In this chapter, we have described the genetic differences that scientists have found about giants. In the next chapter, we will show more evidence of this genetic difference. Hercules, a giant in Greek mythology, was the illegitimate child of Zeus, and his mother was a mortal woman, a human being.
His father was Zeus, the Zeus, king of the gods. His mother, Alcmene, a mortal woman. Together they had a boy, half human, half god.
Perseus, Helen of Troy, and Minos are other famous hybrid children of Zeus. Yes, the genealogy of Greek gods married to human women is very complicated. According to historians interested in the subject, trying to map the genealogy is almost impossible. So the ancient Greeks who believed in their religion literally believed that Zeus could produce offspring from human women in the real world. Among the many people who believed this was the mother of Alexander the Great, who claimed to have fathered Zeus's son. It is claimed that Alexander the Great himself believed this. In Mesopotamia too, the concept of marriage or mating between gods and humans led to many demigods. One of the Mesopotamian kings was married to Ishtar, the goddess of love. There is written literary evidence of such marriages from very early Mesopotamia, before 2300 BC, and this concept continues into much later periods. Some scholars have suggested that these marriages were between a king and a priestess representing the goddess. To give examples from other important cultures, the gods of ancient Egypt also married human women and fathered giants. There were love and marriages between gods and human women. In addition, according to the reports of Egyptologists, there is a theory that a people called the followers of Horus in ancient Egypt formed an aristocracy over the whole of Egypt. That is, they were the rulers of Egypt. When the cemeteries of ancient Egypt were examined, it was seen that the skeletons of the ruling class belonging to the pre-dynastic period in the north of Egypt were larger. It is not known where this race came from. Like Ramses II, there are late pharaohs who portrayed themselves as giants despite their very short stature. But it is not for nothing that ancient pharaohs were drawn as giants. For example, this pharaoh, who was found and researched by scientists, was a giant and was said to be more than 6 feet tall. That is 1 meter 87 centimeter. 1.87 centimeters is a normal height. But scientists say that this pharaoh had undergone an exuberant growth. In other words, the pharaoh's height was deliberately not calculated precisely and was estimated to be over 6 feet tall. As another example, this giant copper statue from the ancient Egyptian dynasties was found together with another statue of normal human size. These sculptures are very realistic, and they were certainly made to tell a truth. Again, in Egypt, there are many giant-sized coffins and tombs, and don't forget the mummy finger we have just shown you.
But there was no mistaking the gods amongst the mortals who worshipped them. The gods were taller, with gold running through their veins instead of blood. And they could transform at will into all manner of frightening beasts.
In the religion of Hinduism, there are sacred texts describing the marriage of human women to gods. For example, in Hinduism, human daughters named Andal and Sita were married to gods and are still considered sacred today. In various parts of the Vedas, it is told that the god Kasyapa, who lived before the flood, that is, during the period of Mu and Atlantis, had many gods, giants, and monsters as children from his various wives and mistresses. In Indian mythology, gods and humans are so intertwined that it is not specified whether the women most of the gods married were human or not. But when you look at the countless Indian figures and paintings, it is noticeable that the women they married were normal human beings, considering that the gods are usually depicted in blue. In Indian mythology, giants are generally called Daityas or Rakshasas, and these giants in Indian mythology are the children of the gods. In India, giants are considered gods because they are the children of the gods, but they are gods of a lower class because they are jealous of their other brothers, the real gods, and fight them. As another example, the gods of India called Devas do not mean giants, but they are strangely depicted as giants. And whether these Deva gods are demigods or not is controversial in Indian mythology. So these diva gods, like Indra, who are depicted as giants, are likely to be demigods. In the ancient Daizan book of India, it is described that the Atlanteans built statues of their own size. Giants also play an important role in Mayan mythology. The famous god Cabrakan is a giant and the son of the ruling demon of the underworld, Vukub Kakich. In other words, the giants known as gods in the Mayan religion were the sons of the devil. Again, in Mayan mythology, giants called Bacabs are the god giants of the pre-flood period. These giants did not die completely in the Great Flood and continued to live as kings again in the newly established Second World after the flood. According to Mayan beliefs, these giants will spread throughout the world again and again throughout history and will disappear again. In the pyramid in Palenque, also in the Americas, Lord Pakal was the god of the Mayans and was 230 meters tall. In Aztec mythology, giants were called Quine Metzin. According to Aztec belief, these giants populated the earth in ancient times but were punished and destroyed by the Creator for their sins and evil deeds. In addition, in many books written by the Spanish and other European invaders who invaded the Americas, the remains of giants were seen and even giant bones were taken to Europe. The diaries of the commanders of the European invaders even record encounters with giants. In one of the diaries, a giant fighting against the European invaders single-handedly repelled the soldiers. At 10 feet tall, the giant warrior single-handedly blocked the advance of European soldiers' SARS. It is claimed that a similar event recently took place in Afghanistan. American soldiers in Afghanistan who went to a cave where a red-haired giant was said to live were attacked by the giant and then killed the giant and took it back to their country. There are also accounts in every culture of demons having relations with humans and fathering kings. The most famous of these legends is that the father of King Dracula, the king of Transylvania and the first vampire, was a demon.
The Turks threatened to destroy my kingdom. Power like yours. I could stop them. Save my people. Save my family.
How supremely noble, Lord Impaler. House Dracul, son of the devil.
You're mistaken. It means son of the dragon, protector of the innocent.
Do your people know how many innocents you have killed?
My name is Dracula, son of the devil.
In all creation myths and holy books, it is mentioned that snake-shaped gods who descended from the heavens, who had superior features and gave technology to humans, impregnated earthly females, and even that earthly females were conceived by a light descending from the sky. Accounts of the marriage of these humans and gods date back to the countries of Mu and Atlantis. In the myth of Atlantis, Plato asserts that the ancestors of the islanders were the offspring of the god, demon, Poseidon, and a human mother. In the Ages of Creation 4QI80 section of the Qumran text, Dead Sea Scrolls, it is emphasized that before the flood of Noah, Satan and his progeny had sexual intercourse with human daughters, who gave birth to giants, thus spreading mischief and chaos on the earth, followed by the flood. It is also written that the gods taught these women magic. The Torah tells us that before Noah's flood, the sons of God came to human daughters and fathered giants. Instead of the corrupted expression sons of God, Torah commentators have used the expression sons of rulers or sons of judges. Greek allegories speak of the 7 daughters of Atlas. Ethnologically, they represent the 7 sub-races of the 4th root race. They all married gods and gave birth to famous giant heroes, founders of many nations and cities. In the ancient book of Enoch, the role of giants in the chaos of that time is described by Enoch, who is believed to have been the prophet Idris. The children of Sky lusted after human women and married them, and from these women giants were born. These giants then began to eat even human beings, and then the flood took place. The Book of Enoch says in chapter 7, according to Chinese records, at a time between 2852 and 2206 BC, almost contemporary with the pharaonic period in Egypt, the semi-mythological 5 kings ruled in China. Chinese mythology also emphasizes sexual relations between snake gods and humans. For example, Bai She Zhuan, a Chinese mythology, is a romantic story set in the Chinese city of Hangzhou. It tells the story of a snake that takes human form and falls in love with a man. In Chinese history, full of snake and dragon motifs, the first human being created was created by a goddess named Nu Kua, half human and half dragon. The I King, an ancient Chinese book, tells that in ancient times, humans and dragons lived together and married to create a new race. Ancient Chinese emperors were called dragon face. Similarly, in Japan, the emperor was descended from dragons. Another feature of Chinese mythology is that a human woman walking on the road was struck by lightning or stepped on a giant footprint and became pregnant and gave birth to gods. China also has its own tradition of an island or continent called Malpasima. Kayem-Fer, in his work Japan, speaks of this tradition as follows. This island sank to the bottom of the ocean because of the evil of its giants, and King Peruan, the Chinese Noah, escaped the flood with his family thanks to the warning of the gods. The people of China today are descended from that pious prince and his descendants. The ancient Gantija temples on the island of Malta, which date back to before 3000 BC, were built by a female giant named Sunsuna, according to legend. In ancient times, this giant woman called Mother Sunsuna, who was born from a human being, was worshipped in Malta. According to Dede Korkut, one of the oldest names in Turkish literature, the giants called demigods were one-eyed wild giants with extremely durable bodies living on Mount Kaf. These giants were born as a result of the mating of fairies and shepherds. The article Tibet in the Dictionary of Mythology describes the forces that ruled in Tibet, which was a colony during the Mu period. The same things that happened in Mu and Atlantis happened in Tibet. A 14th century text, the Book of the King's Words, mentions the existence of much older traditions. One of the chapters describes the demonic, mystical creatures and giants that dominated Tibet before the rule of the first king. These ancient texts speak of jinns called Jin Po, and later of a devil and the mother of a giant who ruled there. According to a narration of Tabari, another Islamic scholar, a giant named Anak existed before the prophet Noah and did not die in the flood. The mother of this disbelieving and cruel giant was a human being.
Thousands of years ago, these hunters found a backwater planet. They taught humans how to build and were worshipped as gods. Every 100 years, the gods would return, and when they did, they would expect a sacrifice. Humans were used to breed the ultimate prey.
As you can see, it is written in many ancient texts that the kings who descended from the sky had giant children with human women. The connection between giants, jinns, and snakes can be seen in almost every ancient text. Again, as an example, in Zoroastrianism, giants were counted together with jinns and snakes. Zoroaster forbade sacrifices to jinns. Later on, classifications were made about jinns. Zoroastrian legends mention jinnish giants like Ajidahaka, with 2 snakes coming out of his shoulders. In addition to these ancient sources, also all ancient oral legends mention giants and their characteristics in a common narrative. In all the ancient records that describe what happened in Mu and Atlantis, it is written that the giants, who were kings before the flood, turned into bandits and fought with people in many parts of the world in the period close to the flood and after the flood. According to historical writings, most of the giants who started to oppress humans were destroyed in the flood, which we proved in the previous chapter, and then some of them continued their existence as kings in the culture they were in, while some of them continued to oppress humans by living as mavericks and were killed by humans. The giants of the country of Akkadian, the remnant of Mu, which we will see later, were also destroyed by the Creator according to the Quran. Before the flood, giants were kings and gods and were treated with respect and reverence, but after the flood, they were generally seen as cruel creatures, and human heroes who fought the giants became famous. The reason why these legends and the ruins and tombs of giants are all over the world is because, as you will understand better in the section on the country of Akkadian, giants spread to all countries of the world and tried to rule there. In our next section, we will give information about the Akkadian and Sumerian empires, which were founded by giants after Noah's flood and ruled the world, that is, the tribes of Ad and Semud, which are described in the Quran. Stay tuned.